Thank you for tuning in to this installment of the Movie Geeks United Anniversary Series. On this episode, we celebrate the 35th anniversary of the hit comedy Ghostbusters. The guest is actor William Atherton, who memorably portrayed the intrusive EPA agent Walter Peck. This interview was conducted in 2009 by Arenado Diaz and our sibling podcast, Back by Midnight.
Our next interview is a pre-recorded interview I did just a couple of days ago with actor William Atherton, who played the great villain EPA Inspector Walter Peck, a.k.a. Dickless, in Ghostbusters, which was probably the most iconic summer film of 1984. And I talked to him last week about that film and how that appearance as that villain kind of spawned a whole mini cottage industry for him, playing heavies in big summer comedies and action films, including Real Genius and Die Hard 1 and 2. But at first, we began at the beginning. But here's my interview with William Atherton. What first drew you to acting?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I think it was the only thing that I felt I could do confidently at the time. It was, I just felt, okay, well, I might be able to do this. Mm-hmm. And being a neurosurgeon and everything else seemed to be kind of out. So I just decided that's what it was. I grew up on a farm, and we had one of the first televisions, and I turned on the television, and that world seemed to be a lot more interesting than the one outside the window.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, you actually you studied at the Pasadena Playhouse?
Well, I went to I did kind of. I mean, I did a couple of small shows there before I went to college. Mm-hmm. I went to Carnegie Mellon, and,
wow.
But there was a wonderful character actor named Victor Jory who was in a lot of pictures. He was in Gone with the Wind even, and he had seen me in a high school play, and he said to his son John Jory, who was running Long Wharf at the time, "Why don't you see this kid?" And I did a couple of shows for him when I was in high school, and then Victor got me this gig in Pasadena, kind of part school, part playing, for a couple of months before I went to college, and so that was my Pasadena Playhouse sojourn there.
Right. And, well, I got to ask about your first major role, casting, because I guess it's kind of interesting. I guess both you and people may not know, you're in the Sugarland Express,
right.
Spielberg's first truly major feature film before Jaws even.
Yeah.
And so this is even before Spielberg is Spielberg. And so what was that process like, and what was Spielberg like as a filmmaker at that young of an age?
Well, he was... I never met anybody who loved the movies more than he did. He had enormous energy. He had enormous good feeling about doing movies. And I met him in New York, and I was on the stage in New York, and they brought me out to California, and I met Goldie, and then a couple of months later, we did the movie. It was all pretty much according to Hoyle. It was, they were interested in me. They brought me out. It all seemed to work out well. We did the movie, and then, I went back to New York, and I went back to the stage, and it was a lovely time. I mean, he was in terms of his acumen and his love for the movies. Since then, I've never met anybody like him. I mean, it was a lovely time. It was all, we shot it all in Texas, and so we were out of kind of like the glitzy L.A. I had known Michael Sachs. Michael Sachs had gone to Harvard, and I had known him in New York. Mm-hmm. And I had known him when he did Slaughterhouse-Five,
right.
A year before that. And so, we were all in kind of the same acting pool in New York at the time, so I'd known him. And then I met Goldie, and then, it was like Vilmos Zsigmond, one of the great cinematographers of all time, and it was this lovely synchronicity of people and events, and that's what happened, essentially.
Yeah. And another...
Well, the thing about Sugarland, which kind of put Steve over the top, was that Pauline Kael devoted like 4 pages to it in the New Yorker when it came out, and that was kind of unprecedented.
Right, and then later on, a few years later, you did another great film, one of my favorites, the very polarizing Day of the Locust.
Yes,
And,
that's a very polarizing movie. Yeah.
And what was that? And were you aware? How aware were you of the source material before you did the film? And what was that experience like?
Well, Nathaniel West, I was aware of the Miss Lonely Hearts and Cool Million. I wasn't aware of Locust so much. I was just as a short story, and I read up on him. And he was Kaufman's brother-in-law, and he died young, and so he and his wife was the basis of My Sister Eileen, the Kaufman comedy, and they died young in a car accident, and he'd always been kind of in this pantheon of kind of unacknowledged writers, Hollywood writers at the time. And so I looked into him. His father was a big builder in New York. His father built a lot of the apartment buildings on Central Park West. So I went around trying to find if anybody knew him. And nobody really had. Everybody had kind of moved on, and he didn't spend that much time in New York. So that was, another kind of, you just get hit by the right bus.
Right. Were you prepared for when the movie came out that it was going to be so polarizing, or did you kind of suspect that when you all were making that?
Well, I guess you do. I mean, again, at the time, I was doing a lot in New York, and that's where I lived, and that's where, my vanity lay, being in the theater more than anything else. And it was, it kind of got polarizing. It was a big picture at the time. It was the most expensive picture Paramount had ever made on the lot by the time at that time, and it was, and it had admirers and detractors, and still does, and it still kind of goes on,
And
one of those movies.
And Schlesinger as a director, I mean, this is his peak. This is, after Midnight Cowboy and Sunday Bloody Sunday.
Well, he thought it would be like Greed. He thought that the picture Greed, which wasn't really valued at the time, he thought that Day of the Locust would be his Greed. It was the picture that he felt was his best and that wouldn't be acknowledged for some time. I remember he would talk about that way.
Right. I wanted to ask about one more film from that era, and that's Looking for Mr. Goodbar, which is a film I admire quite a bit. And I was wondering what that one was like. Also, I guess even more so, a more polarizing film, and also from a polarizing book, and very adventurous.
Well, the book was kind of revelatory at the time. The book was about the singles bar scene, and that scene was kind of waning a bit before the book came out. The singles bar scene was an early 70s scene in New York,
right.
And where you had all these really, beautiful looking bars like Maxwell's Plum and all of that, and people go to hook up there. This is, pre-cell phone and Twitter, and this is what people did, and it was kind of like an expose of that, and it was a very specifically New York story. And Brooks and Freddie Fields wanted to make it more general in terms of what it said about society at the time, and that's why they did it in California.
Right. And well, I guess we can. So that was, I think, 77, and then you did a bunch of other films and TV. But then I guess some would say kind of a new phase of the kind of roles you got begins in '84 with Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And so how did you get that role? How did that role come to you?
Well, I had known. I went and I met with him out here. I was doing something out here. I just finished Cane Mutiny in New York, I think, or something, and I was out here doing. I don't remember exactly what, and I met them all, and and they asked me to do it. I mean, I had known Gilda Radner, and I had met them in the several years before, because Gilda and I had done George Abbott's Broadway together.
Right.
And so I kind of knew what that world was like, and what they were like, and I think they asked me to do it because I said, look, guys, I can't compete being funny with you. I mean, you're the iconic comics of our time. What am I going to be doing there? So I with Theone Aldrich, who's a costume designer, and with Ivan, we just kind of came to the idea that I'd be like a male Margaret Dumont. I just didn't know why it was funny, and I was going to play it like Antigone, and to the death, and that would give them something to bounce off of, and me to bounce off of them, and that that took the onus off of me being deliberately funny, which is stupid. And
you only have, I guess, 3 scenes in the film, and plus your big kind of exit in the film. But you only have 3 real scenes in the film. But was it known at the time that you were going to be kind of not only the villain of the piece, but that just those 3 scenes, people were the audience was going to despise you? Was that?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, as I look back on it now, maybe. I mean, the idea was that I wanted them to kind of dislike me, so that's those are the choices that I made. I didn't have any, I didn't have any great feeling to be the lovable bad guy. I didn't really care. I just wanted to be the bad guy that would work for the piece. That and that's how that character would go, and that's what I did. It's funny, you do things, and you get up and you go to work, and then they last forever or they don't.
Right.
Particularly in this business, and you never really know. And so I wasn't really thinking about it for the ages. I was thinking about it for those couple of months. And
your main antagonist, I guess, is Bill Murray.
Oh yeah.
And so were those scenes sticking to the script, or was there room?
Well, some of it was, some of it wasn't. Some of it was. It was all kind of thrown out there. Bill is so great that you just kind of go with what he throws out there, and so I think we strayed a couple of times. I don't remember specifically so much, but that was the atmosphere of it.
And I guess Dan Aykroyd, oddly enough, Dan Aykroyd probably has the line of the whole movie, referring you to Dick as Dickless.
Right. Yeah, and that's we were all in the tank. They used what I gave them, and I tried to give them my best, and then it morphed. How can I say?
I understand your big final scene where you get all the quote unquote marshmallow dumped on you. I understand you almost got injured. Is this true?
Well, no. I didn't. I just. It's funny when you tell a story and all of a sudden it comes back at you elaborated 800 times, and you find that you've annoyed people. You didn't mean to annoy people. No, it was not that I was almost injured. It was like there were 150 pounds of shaving cream, and they were going to fall on me. And I went, well, I remember in the 7th grade that 150 pounds of feathers and 150 pounds of lead is kind of like the same thing. So can we just kind of make sure that I'm not going to be splayed out? And so they did a couple of tests which showed that I might have verged on splayed out or splayed out adjacent. So we made less shaving cream and we kind of went on. So it's a little daunting in a movie when you say, gee, I might get hurt with that, because then you have everybody standing around going, oh God, the guy, the wimpy sissy actor doesn't want to do it, But it worked out all right.
And when you saw the film, did you know that it was going to be something? One thing is when you're making it and when you read it, and the other thing is when you finally see it. Did you know that it was going to be the success that it was?
Yeah, when I saw it, I did. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And so what was?
Well, when I made it, I knew it was going to be a success. I knew it was going to do well. You don't necessarily think it's going to be, a herd of buffalo, but I thought it was going to do well, and then I saw that it was going to be a herd of buffalo.
Mm-hmm. This one role kind of carried you for a while in a type of role that you would do in films. I guess the following year is Real Genius. And did you get Real Genius because of the type of role you did? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. And then the Die Hards, and then Biodome, and then lots of other things since then, even up to the series I just did.
Right. Well, and so, and how do you kind of because some actors, they don't, they like to do different things, but the fact that you also do, theater work and other kinds of work, do you not mind kind of also having this kind of go-to?
Well, I mean, it seems at times it's the higher profile of it. It isn't the only thing that I do, but those are the movies that are signature, and because a movie's a signature, you're only as good as your movie, and those movies were enormous movies. I've done other movies with different roles that have done fine, but they've just been eclipsed by the size of those movies, as most everything would be.
Mm-hmm. And
it's like when Steven Spielberg did Jaws, there was a thing that Sugarland wasn't terribly successful. Well, Sugarland wasn't Jaws by any means, but it was not that unsuccessful. But anything in relation to Jaws would have been seen that way.
Right. And is it fun though to play these?
Oh, I've always had a wonderful time doing that. I always had a big because people. Yeah, I have no vanity about it. I like playing either evil unsureness or unattractiveness. I don't have any vanity about it at all. I don't mind it. I think it's much more fun, and it's much more liberating. And you don't have to. There's a lot of pretense, in any business, and I kind of find that it's a great atmosphere where you don't have to have a certain kind of personality pretense in terms of what you're doing. I really don't mind. I mean, there's certain things obviously that I'm not going to. I'm kind of careful about how I do it. I like to play smart characters, not stupid ones, and I like to get people who are trying to craft their own defensive sad worlds in one way or the other. I think that's kind of fun. That's I've always had fun doing that, so I don't really care.
And
I'm rather glad, as a matter of fact. It's kind of it gave me what I got.
Right. And from what I understand, you're the role is so popular in Ghostbusters. You're in the video game. Is that correct?
Yeah, we did the game last year, and I guess it's gonna do well. And that was interesting doing a game. I'd never done a game.
What muscles do you use as an actor for a video game that either you didn't know those are the muscles that you use, or maybe there were things you hadn't done in a while?
Well, I didn't have any muscles because I never played video games, so I didn't really have them. I had to kind of import muscles, but it's like animation. Mm-hmm. I think more than anything else, and you're just by yourself when you play it, and there's a lot of ooh ah ah ah, there's a lot of that stuff to it. So there were a couple of days with a lot of fun lines, and a couple of days of just ooh ah ooh kind of stuff,
Yeah. Well, then that must be something you might. I guess that must be kind of fun that you're not only you immortalized in movies, but now you'll be. people can actually play you or play with you in a video game for
yeah, it's odd. It's very odd. I just when I was a kid and looked at the first little 19-inch Sylvania black and white television, little did I know that people would have machines where you could where you could actually put Gene Autry on the horse.
Right.
It's the whole world.
And I'll ask this as the last question. And what now it is 25 years, and we're doing this as part of looking back at the summer of '84. What do you remember from that summer when this movie came out, and what do you remember thinking then, and what do you think of it now, of that experience, of that summer in particular, and your small contribution to it, your contribution to that phenomenon?
Well, I mean, gee.
Don't want to put too much of a burden on you.
It's essential. I mean, '84 was the middle of the Reagan years. This was Ghostbusters was a very good-natured comedy, and it was very, it was kind of uplifting in its way and fun and good-spirited, like I said, and it was very, I think, emblematic of that. It was people were rather hopeful, and it was the economy was bad. I remember that, but there was something kind of graceful about Ghostbusters in terms of being a big comedy, and that was kind of unique. And also, it was huge as a comedy, huge scientifically to put on the screen. I mean, all that animation and everything, that was very new. Nobody'd ever done that kind of thing.
Right.
And it was, so it was kind of like a step just in looking at how movies were made. And then it was, metaphysically, it was just kind of a lovely, smiling movie. There wasn't anything mean about it. There wasn't anything, terribly narrowly violent about it. And
right.
So there was Sigourney up there looking great, and that's how I remember it. As I look back on it now, I remember it as rather a lovely setting and a lovely time.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Atherton, I want to thank you for coming on to talk about this. And if we're still on the air next year for summer '85, I guess you'll be back to talk about the Real Genius.
Okay. Well, good luck to you all.
All right. Well, thank you so much, sir.
Oh, my pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.